San Andreas, once again, builds on the existing gameplay, but this time it adds a lot of new features. With the story, the big difference between this game and Vice City is that Vice City had a TV show feel to it, while San Andreas feels more like a movie storyline where you're a character named CJ who moves back to San Andreas after leaving several years before. Naturally, when he returns, nothing is the same, and he has to deal with all the changes and all the new dangers that are involved. This is a very well thought out story. Each character is given a personality, and the story keeps you interested from start to finish. First, let me discuss the setting. San Andreas is portrayed as a state in the game, and it contains 3 cities: Los Santos, San Fierro, and Las Venturas. The setting is huge. San Andreas towers over Liberty City in GTA 3. Before its release, I was initially worried when it was announced that San Andreas would have 3 separate cities, because my thought was the game would be nothing but long, boring drives that would take up 90% of the missions. That's not the case with San Andreas. In fact, Rockstar made sure to make each mission well-timed and interesting. One of the big changes that Rockstar announced was that there would no longer be any loading times when switching cities. This is actually both true and false. True that there is no longer any loading screens, but the game does tend to pause and jump when switching cities. While Vice City added a few things, San Andreas adds a lot of things. Not only are you able to go into more places, but there have been a great deal of additions added that you can do with your character. One of the big additions is that you can change the appearance of your character. With Vice City, the only thing that was really changeable was the clothes. Now, not only can you change the clothes, you can also change your character's appearance, like your hairstyle, and also change your weight. With the weight feature, there are several things involved. You can weight lift to gain muscle, you can run and work on your cardio, or you can simply lose weight or gain weight. To build muscle, you can go to the many gyms that are scattered throughout the area. You can do cardio easily by running around the city and swimming. That's another thing I haven't mentioned yet. All 3 games from GTA 3 through San Andreas have rivers or oceans that are in their environments, and in GTA 3 and Vice City your character could not swim, which you would think would be a requirement from the developers since all these environments have huge oceans in them. San Andreas finally fixes that problem. To gain weight, you simply have to eat a lot of food. This game actually gives your character the ability to eat, which means that the pizza places and the fast food joints finally serve a purpose in the game. These modes actually play a much bigger role than you might think, because I've played the game with a fat CJ and an in-shape CJ, and some missions are tougher if you choose for your character to gain weight. For instance, if you have to run a lot, having a fat CJ doesn't help, unless you want the game to be even more difficult than it already is. The haircuts go back and forth, mainly because of the graphics at the time. The hair doesn't even look like hair, it looks like something out of an anime film. There are also a few other mini-games you can play when you play the game long enough. For instance, in Las Venturas, which is based on Las Vegas, you can go into casinos and gamble, or you can go into strip clubs. So there have been a lot of things added to the game to give it more replay value, which I can honestly say that San Andreas does very well, especially when you consider that it's a game that lacks a multiplayer mode. With GTA 3 and Vice City, taxi driving and ambulance driving, while fun as well, did grow stale after a while. With San Andreas, Rockstar finally found a way to make up for the fact that this was a single-player game. Now, with the graphical look of the game, that seems to be where the game does fall short of its predecessors. Don't get me wrong, it's still a good-looking game, but it's quite obvious for a game of this size there would be something that would fall short, especially when it came to the console versions, especially the PS2. The PS2 does have a great deal of frame rate problems. Because of San Andreas' sheer size, the processing power of the PS2 was severely tested, and while the game as a whole runs okay, the fact that Rockstar wanted to get rid of loading screens and shorten the loading times in general does come back to haunt this version. The frame rate jumps like crazy in some spots, and this especially becomes noticeable if you're at the 6-star wanted level and you're battling a lot of cops. The draw distance is also very poor on the PS2, which is an area where the previous games excelled at. But overall, the frame rate problems and the draw distance doesn't affect the gameplay. The gameplay is still intact, so it's just a matter of getting used to it. The Xbox version does fall short of its version of Vice City as well. For the most part, the frame rate is intact, the draw distance is better, but where the Xbox surprisingly falls short is its environments. The cars look fine, the character models look fine when compared to the other versions, but the buildings, particularly the interiors of the buildings, look rather flat. It's almost as if Rockstar had to sacrifice that to make the rest of the game look better, and it should be noted that this is the only GTA game out of the 3 on the Xbox that does not have realistic hands on the characters. I know that sounds small, but that's one of the elements that separated the Xbox version from the PS2 version graphically. The PC version is the better game out of the 3, with everything being intact. The environments are great, and the game runs the smoothest with little to no frame rate problems. The colorization seems a bit off, but I don't know whether that's just my PC or not, because I don't have the greatest PC in the world. So overall, San Andreas, despite some graphical flaws and frame rate issues, is the perfect GTA game. The game offers so much and really represents what an open world game should be. I really wish that all open world games would take a note from San Andreas because it's great. Well, that's GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. It's really interesting seeing the difference between GTA 1 through 2 and GTA 3 through San Andreas. It's amazing how big a difference a new console can make. But it's not over yet. Another generation of consoles are next as we move into Part 3. In Part 3, we enter the PS3 and Xbox 360 era, and take a look at Grand Theft Auto 4 and its 2 editions, The Lost and Damned and The Ballad of Gay Tony. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.